he experienced in his lifetime, and he was a living ninja. That's the truth of it. A modern day living ninja. I think it'll go down in history, in the history books as that. I don't see any other. That's his destiny. That was his destiny. As the way it played out. An incredible legacy that his sons hold, and they really do their father proud. If you get to see Greg demonstrate, it's straightforward and to the point. You know, we're going to be doing a critique of the week. I think we should critique Greg.
All right, sounds good.
You want to do that?
Yeah.
All right, we're going to find some footage of Greg and we'll critique what he's doing.
Sounds like a plan. Yeah. Awesome. Look forward to that. Awesome. Yeah, I wish I got a chance to meet Sensei Ronald Duncan. There were several ninja camps that we were invited to, and because of work I couldn't make them, or some other crazy thing I was involved in, and I'm so upset that I had not attended one of his, but I was glad to have gotten the invite. Had I taken I know. Like several years.
Multiple times. Come on, you gotta go.
Totally upset about it.
And a lot of the other students, a lot of my students attended, and a lot of my students, got to have those experiences.
Lucky bastards. But I look at it, even though I didn't meet the man, I've heard of him through Sensei and a lot of other people that met him, and some of the videos I've watched of him. And I just finished watching the story of Jackie Robinson, the new movie that's out. Who was the first African American allowed to play baseball.
Yeah.
And he's quite literally the Jackie Robinson of the martial arts arena.
Oh yeah.
Especially being, black. Like in those days, it was hard to get anything, let alone wield weapons around that time. It's like we'll let you have a baseball, but that sword you got to put down. I'm sure that had to be a hard time.
Man, I heard a story about him during the World's Fair. He did a ninjutsu demonstration. He was all masked up, and everybody was talking about how wonderful he was. Oh my gosh, what an incredible ninja, And then, as the story goes, and I don't know how accurate it was, but I was told this by some of his highest students. So he's just tearing the crap out of everybody, beating everybody up, and showing the art, and then it comes to the end of the demonstration, and people are just taken back, like, wow, what an incredible guy, And then he takes the mask off, and he's black. People just doing that.
What?
Which I can't pretend to know what that is. I can't, and we had discussions about it when he was. He talked to me about it a few times, and he just, you could tell that it just helped forge him. He just became that much stronger.
Mm-hmm.
Necessity, forges a man. But yeah, well put. I think he was very much like the Jackie Robinson of martial arts. One of them. I mean, there were others, but he was definitely one of the first. Yeah.
God bless him. God bless him. What a pioneer.
Yeah. He's often referred to as that. A pioneer in the martial arts. One interesting thing that I have to say is that when you meet a man of caliber, you don't have to sift through the ego. It just wasn't there.
Wow.
It was awesome.
That's a beautiful thing.
I got to. Who am I? He doesn't know me from a hole in the ground. Not only did I get to sit at his table and speak to him, not only did he give me the time, and he's got hundreds of students. Usually when you're the great grandmaster or something, you have these students that are ready to posture and not allow you to talk to the grandmaster and stuff like that. I didn't have to deal with that. Everyone was very welcoming and very pragmatic and very respectful, and they really believed in honor and respect and integrity. I was just talking to Ronald Duncan's son, Greg the other day on the phone. He says to me, "You know me, David. You know I live it. I don't just speak it." And I just thought, yeah. You don't even have to say it, brother. You know, I know. So the thing that was really great was something that you don't get to experience. And I've been in the samurai arts a lot longer than I've been in the ninja arts. I started ninjutsu before I started the samurai arts, but I kind of left ninjutsu behind as I studied the samurai arts, and I studied the samurai arts for many, many years, and I've been obsessed with them. When you get to meet different samurai practitioners or practitioners of samurai-derived arts, you get, do you know who you're speaking to?
Oh, jeez.
Here we go.
The ego.
Yeah, man. Just like, what the heck, you know?
Yeah, I battled with that. Going back to the ego thing with this guy I was telling you about. Yeah. I'm going through quite a dilemma with the artist that I'm trying to help. But apparently he feels he's helping me, but he called me. But in any case, his ego is so big, and he gave me that, do you know who you're dealing with? Do you know who I am? Because of his money, really, because he's more unknown than I am. Like, at least I have a musical history. You can Google me and you will find articles about my rap experience and the label I was signed to. You Google him and it's like, you can't find this dude, but yet he's helping me.
But why would you even have to say that? That sounds like your ego defending itself.
Right, my ego is defending from his ego. Yeah, it's like an ego fight.
Don't go there.
So how do I combat that?
This is what you don't do. You know, this is what you don't do. When they're talking, this is what they get into my face and they tell me about how they were trained. Do you know how I was trained? And then I just go, all right, well, let's listen to it. You know, because I'll never get to speak to you until I get to speak to the bouncer, which is your ego. All right, here we go. Here we go. You know, and I have to listen to it. So I was trained this way, and back in the day I was trained this way, and they've got to fill you in on this persona that they maintain. And I go, yeah. Sometimes, you know, my ego wants to shout out, listen, dude. You know, listen, buddy. You know, my sensei broke tons of my bones. You know, you don't hear me ragging about it. But to even as I say that now, I don't want to say that now because it sounds like my ego defending itself. And honest, who cares? We've all been through amazing things, right? That's the martial arts experience, you know? There's this thing in Kendo. Kendo, because it's modern martial art, they tried to hold on to these tenets of the samurai world, but it was unsuccessful because you didn't have the same training as what the samurai did. So you had this modern art of Japanese fencing called Kendo, and you found that everybody would just talk a tremendous amount of crap on each other. And this was widely known, that if you went to a Kendo match, so there are these Kendo competitions, you know, and instead of just competing, it became a contest of spouting out ridiculous, ego-driven insults toward each other. Mm-hmm. And one guy came up with, and I don't know who this man is, but one guy came up with this idea. He was like, he was so fed up with everybody talking and chattering and everything. It was about the sport. Kendo is the art of Japanese fencing. It's a sport. So he says, I'm so sick of this. He goes, I did 1,000 showmen giri today. Did you? And everybody was like looking, because 1,000 cuts, even though it's with a shinai, you know, bamboo sword, which isn't that
light.
Yeah, it's not easy, not difficult to wield, but
right.
But 1,000 swings, 1,000 downward cuts with, you know, showmen. With the shinai, he says, did you? No. Well, then shut up. That's what he says, you know. And he started a tradition, and that was the tradition. telling people to shut up. Did you do 1,000 showmen today? Did you? Did you? And shut up.
Wow. So the ego. See, and I believe it's an ongoing war of egos. But how do you know, like Sensei Ronald Duncan? How did he get past the egos he must have ran into and not have one himself?
There was a time where I thought I ticked him off so bad. He's telling me about these modern ninjutsu practitioners. He's telling me, first he's talking to me about like the stuff that he did for the government and stuff. Like these serious missions that he was on. He's talking about how he employed ninjutsu in the field. And then he says, these modern guys, you know, they train and, you know, they train in the dojo, and they train under this guy, who trained under this guy, who trained under this guy, and none of them have combat experience, you know. And he says, and then they dare to get online and question me. And I'm just shaking my head. I go, yeah. And he goes, like this. And I'm not really noticing. There's just kind of silence. And I'm just thinking in my head, yeah, man, that's just the folly of man. That's what I'm thinking. And I look up, and he's looking at me like, what are you thinking? You know? Why haven't you said anything?
He was expecting you to say something?
Yeah, I think he was expecting me to go, well, yeah, that's ridiculous, you know?
Mm-hmm.
But I didn't say that was ridiculous. I was thinking that's ridiculous. I was actually thinking how sad it is, you know, that's a common trait in human being. Better, you know? You take your car to the mechanic. He's trained. It's what he does for a living. He tells you need a new carburetor or something. You're like, no.
Like he doesn't know what
he doesn't know what he's talking about. You know?
He must be mistaken.
No.
You sure you're a mechanic?
Yeah. You need new front brakes. No. You know? And it's, you know, some of it is based on dishonesty. I went to a dentist once. He told me, this is crazy, but he told me I had 4 cavities. One here, one here, one here, and one here. And that's really something. He's like, we need to drill right away. And he's pulling up the x-ray and he's showing me. I'm like, wow, I don't see anything. And he's like, no, it's right there. Well, you don't have a trained eye. I was like, yeah, you're right, you know. And I start thinking like, oh, I don't know, you know. So I go to a different dentist. The guy's like, you're good. You don't have anything.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
What was the name of that dentist? No, don't do it. Don't do it.
It was Dr. I shouldn't throw his name out.
No. I want to get sued.
No, so then I go back like years later to my original dentist. He says, I haven't seen you in a while. I heard you switched. I was like, yeah, you know, logistics. And he goes, how you doing? I was like, oh, I'm just here for a checkup. And it was really, like, if I had those 4 cavities, I'd be root canal territory at this point. You know? And I actually had butterflies in my stomach, thinking, what if he was the correct dentist? And this other dentist was the whack job. He was like, yeah, you're good. Your mouth is rotting apart. You're fine. Right. You know, you're fine. You know, I don't know. You know, so who do I believe, right? So I take my mouth back to this guy after like 2 years. And he goes, perfect as always. See you later. And I just thought, how do I kill you?
Wow.
I kill you. You were going to drill 4 holes in 4 teeth. So I understand.
So he changed the story when you went back?
Yeah.